Donald Trump absolutely dissembled during the weekend White House coronavirus press briefings. And I challenge you today to tell me what on earth Donald Trump is talking about here. He actually seems ill in this video. He's not making any sense. I cannot for the life of me figure out what Donald Trump is talking about, but let's play it. It's the stuff of horrors.
Back to the scene that you used to have, which was, look, I could tell you about, and I'm not going to do it because I didn't want to bring it up, but I could tell you about events that took place. And I said things like, you'll never do that again, or you'll never do this again, or I don't even want to mention the events. I don't want to mention what you're supposed to be doing. Because, and you know, one of them was so horrible. I said a certain industry will be out of business, never happen again. 2 weeks later, it was like nothing ever happened. Hopefully, we get rid of this. We have tremendous talent up here and all over, including governors.
That doesn't make sense. There is nothing there. There is no substance. What Trump is talking about is impossible to ascertain from what he is saying. Look at a transcript of this. It doesn't mean anything. Back to the scene which you used to have, which was, look, I could tell you about, and I'm not going to do it because I didn't want to bring it up, but I could tell you about events that took place. And I said things like, you'll never do that again, or you'll never do this again, or I don't even want to mention the events. I don't want to mention what you're supposed to be doing because, and you know, one of them was so horrible. I said a certain industry will be out of business, never happen again. 2 weeks later was like nothing ever happened. Hopefully we get rid of this. We have tremendous talent up here and all over, including governors. I don't know what he's talking about. This is not the way someone who is of sound mind communicates with people, never mind on a daily basis for hours, day in and day out, where the reporters just have to sit there and wait for it to end and ask their next question. Here's another one from the following day, which again makes absolutely no sense. It's an unhinged and wacky rant attacking the media as thousands of Americans per day continue to die.
Sources say, you know what sources say means? Sources say means they have nobody and they make it up, okay? And they have a few other type statements that mean the same thing. But sources say is the most often used expression in the Washington Post, New York Times especially, CNN, fake news, CNN. They should really be mandated, and I mean mandated, to use a name. If there's a source, use a name.
So there is Trump demanding that journalistic convention around sources. Sources, of course, an absolutely critical element of journalism, be thrown out, and all sources must be named. You can't have that. You can't say sources here. You can't have an anonymous source. Of course, remember, anonymous sources typically are anonymous to the public, but the reporter knows who they are. And Trump just continuing to do this thing where he attacks the basic conventions of journalism and press freedom. And then Trump going on to talk about testing and just how amazing and great everything is, and sort of promoting coronavirus tests as if they're some new iPhone or something like that, that are just going to crush the competition. Take a look.
I don't believe the sources exist. And I try and tell this, you know, the beautiful thing about doing these conferences is that we have tremendous numbers of viewers, and I'm able to reach the viewers without having to go through fake news where they make a good story into a bad story. So with all of that, it's been an incredible period of time. We've done a fantastic job with the talk of other nations. The leaders of other nations are calling us for help. They're calling us for equipment. They're calling us for testing capacities. Now, with the testing, we are going further. Deborah's going to talk about that now. With the testing, we have some other tests coming up that are going to be, I think, phenomenal. I think they're going to blow away everything as soon as they come out, and we're going to get them out as soon as possible. But I'd like to ask Dr. Birx to come up and say a few words about where we've come, how far we've come, and more importantly, where we're going from this point, because honestly, it's quite amazing. Thank you very much.
That's the President of the United States, if you can believe it. And then the testing thing, we're going to do a deeper dive into testing tomorrow. remember that the testing thing is now a way to scapegoat governors for Donald Trump. Trump has been bragging for months about how all that's happening with testing is because of him, and that we're testing the best and we're testing the most and all of this stuff. Now that Trump's talking about reopening, and numerous public health officials are making clear we just don't have the tests to reopen right now, Trump is very quickly shifting and talking about, hey, listen, these governors have to test. I mean, we're doing what we can here, but the governors really need to do the testing. The numbers right now are we're testing about 150,000 a day. Yesterday, we tested, I think, about 167,000. That's the most we've tested in a day. That needs to more than triple to get us to a minimum for reopening. We need at least 500,000 tests a day that we're doing, not that are sitting somewhere. 500,000 a day minimum. One roadmap says we need 1 million tests a day to reopen. One roadmap says we really need 22 million a day to reopen, which is a crazy number, but that would let you test the whole country on a rolling basis every 2 weeks. In any case, Trump now starting to shift blame on testing to governors. And then lastly, here's Trump trying to humiliate a reporter whose question he doesn't like by interrupting and insisting the guy tell him who he works for and flippantly telling the guy, yeah, keep reading your question.
Of everything. Yet the American people don't understand why you're unwilling to use the awesome powers of your presidency to make American companies manufacture the PPE and also the testing equipment that you need to implement your recommendation.
No, but who are you with?
I'm with TMN. Recommendations for
TMN. What is
Talk
TMN?
Media News.
What?
My name is Doug Christian with Talk Media News. Yes.
Talk Media News.
Yeah. And
Go ahead, keep reading your question.
So increasingly, you're seeing networks just not carrying the full press briefings. And it's tough because new policy is announced at these press briefings pretty often. So here's my view on it. The Mike Pence part is worthless. Pence goes up there. He never announces any new guidelines. He praises Trump for his leadership. He lists the number of, masks that air bridge flights are ordering or whatever. I mean, it's absolutely meaningless. So my policy now, it increasingly has been, and now it will be on a hard and fast basis, I will be muting the Mike Pence part. It's worthless. The Trump part, I do the best I can to fact check so that when Trump lies about testing or this or that fact, I try to instantly rebut it so that at least my audience understands how the disinformation is being formulated. And then we have the portion where we hear from doctors, which is actually useful to the extent that the doctors are telling us the full truth. Sadly, Dr. Birx is increasingly a vector of mild disinformation as well, very clearly placating Trump in ways that go above and beyond the sort of mere collegiality of Dr. Fauci. Dr. Birx is actually becoming a perpetuator of some of Trump's disinformation. And then you have the question session, which I do actually find interesting to see what reporters ask. But that's where we are right now in terms of the press briefings. And as you can see, very bizarre things are taking place at these press briefings. One of our sponsors is Cuts Clothing, giving you 15% off their entire collection of super quality men's t-shirts at davidpakman.com/cuts. That's CUTS. The solid color t-shirt is a core component of any guy's wardrobe, certainly of mine, which is all the more reason why you should love the t-shirts in your closet. It impacts your day-to-day life. Your typical poorly made t-shirt scratches, it shrinks, the neck stretches, the color fades, the whole thing warps over time. None of those things happen with Cuts Clothing. As soon as I put one of their shirts on for the first time, I notice the comfort, I notice the quality, I notice the look and the fit. And it's a noticeable level of quality, which would be appropriate for something like going on a date or going into the office. If you're watching on YouTube, I am wearing the classic Henley right now, as you can see. Go check out what Cuts Clothing has to offer. You will see and feel the difference as soon as you put it on. The slogan is, it's the only shirt worth wearing, and you will see why. And you'll get 15% off. What's better than that? By going to davidpakman.com/cuts. That's davidpakman.com/CUTS.